48 hours. That's the deadline Barbara Higgins gave David Tran to cut down his late wife's 60-year-old peach orchard. David reads the notice. $50,000 fine, printed on the back of a grocery store flyer advertising discounted milk. No notarized signature, no official seal, just a line in all caps. Final notice, mandatory compliance. He steps out to the backyard, looks at the tree, walks back inside, makes coffee. No lawyer calls, no posts online, no knocking on neighbors' doors. On paper, David loses from the start. 62 years old, retired, no legal connections. Barbara has the HOA, has the board, has 47 households signed behind her. And Section 7, Clause 4 of the bylaws, any tree exceeding a 3-meter canopy diameter requires architectural committee approval. Violation, minimum $50,000 fine or mandatory removal within 48 hours. $50,000, 48 hours, chainsaw or cash. David opens the third kitchen cabinet from the left, pulls out a small tin box, lid dusty, edges worn, and sets it on the table. He doesn't open it, just looks at it for a moment, then puts it back in the cabinet, closes the door, sits down with his coffee. Barbara has 48 hours, but David has been waiting 14 years. Another 48 hours isn't urgent. I found this story on r/legal advice late one night, scrolling through a feed I had no real reason to be in. First read, I thought it was a standard HOA case. Second read, I realized I'd missed the entire bottom layer. The post got over 58,000 upvotes in 48 hours. A real estate attorney in Georgia left a comment. I've been practicing for 24 years. I've never seen a 99-year ground lease deployed this way. This man isn't defending himself. He's setting a trap. What makes David Tran's story more than a story about a peach tree is that he knew exactly what he was holding, and he had the patience to wait until the other person walked into it on their own. To understand how a 62-year-old retired man could sit calmly on his porch while workers showed up with chainsaws, we need to go back 1 week earlier, to the night David opened the tin box for the first time in years, not to fight, just to remember what his wife sounded like when she said his name. Barbara doesn't wait out the 48 hours. Of course she doesn't. The next morning, David is making coffee when he hears a diesel engine outside. He looks through the window. An orange flatbed truck is parked outside the gate. 2 men in reflective vests step out, carrying chainsaws. Barbara stands on the opposite sidewalk, clipboard pressed against her chest like a riot shield. The neighbor next door, Mrs. Chen, is on her front steps, phone in hand, not calling anyone yet, but ready. David sets his mug down, opens the door, steps out. One of the workers looks at him, uncomfortable. "Sorry, sir, we're under HOA orders. We're here to clear non-compliant vegetation." Non-compliant how? No commercial planting permit. David glances toward Barbara. She doesn't look back. She's writing something on her clipboard. "This is a home garden," David says, voice even. "I don't sell peaches." The worker shrugs. "I'm just following the contract, sir." David nods, turns around, steps back inside, closes the door. But he doesn't lock it, and he doesn't take his eyes off the window. The second worker, bigger, broader, pulls the chainsaw cord. The engine sputters to life. He walks toward the oak gate and stops. In the lower corner of the gate is a small brass plate, oxidized dark, engraved 1984. The worker turns back to his partner. "This gate, it's older than the HOA? Doesn't matter. Cut it." "I'm not cutting historical property, man." Barbara steps forward, voice sharp. "You're being paid to work, not to debate property law." The shorter worker kills his chainsaw. "Do you have a demolition permit?" Barbara doesn't blink. "The HOA has full authority over all property within the boundary lines." "Then show me the document." Barbara opens her mouth. Silence. Then she turns to her clipboard like the answer might be buried somewhere in the paperwork. Mrs. Chen walks down from her steps. "Barbara, what exactly are you doing?" "Enforcing the rules." "Which rule allows you to destroy someone else's gate?" Barbara turns, face flushed. "Mrs. Chen, if you keep interfering with HOA operations, I will inspect your fence next. It's 12 inches over regulation height." Mrs. Chen doesn't move, but she doesn't step back either. And that's the moment David understands. Barbara doesn't just want to destroy the orchard. She wants to send a message. Both workers leave after 20 minutes. Nothing cut. Barbara stands alone on the sidewalk, thumb crushing a pen cap, eyes still fixed on the oak gate like willpower alone might unlock it. But she isn't done. That afternoon, a gray Honda Civic parks in front of David's house. A middle-aged man steps out, white button-down, professional camera. He photographs the gate, the peach tree, David's trash cans. David steps onto the porch. "Can I help you?" The man smiles, very polite. "I'm an independent assessor, sir, hired by the HOA to evaluate property conditions." "Evaluate what?" "Zoning violations, safety concerns, public hazard." David nods slowly. "And how much is Barbara paying you?" The man stops shooting. "I don't understand the question." "That's fine. Keep going." The assessor shoots for another 15 minutes, then drives away. Mrs. Chen crosses the street carrying a tin of cookies. "David, you should call a lawyer." David accepts the tin. "Thank you, but I don't need one." "She's not going to stop." "I know. So what are you going to do?" David pauses, eyes on the orchard. "I'm going to let her." That night, David sits alone at the kitchen table. The tin box sits open in front of him, but he hasn't taken anything out. He just looks at the rolled yellow document inside, tied with red twine, as if weighing whether it even needs to be touched. He already knows what it says, memorized every clause, but he needs to confirm one thing, whether 14 years changed anything. The next morning, he calls the Millfield County Records Office, waits 35 minutes before someone picks up. Dry voice, keyboard clicking steadily in the background. David reads the contract number, the company name, Greenfield LLC. The execution date, June 14th, 1963. 4 minutes of silence on the other end. The sound of papers turning. "Yes, sir. This contract is on file, notarized, and..." A 1-second pause. "The termination notice dated March 12, 2010, was confirmed received." The clerk's voice becomes noticeably more careful. "Is there a problem with this contract?" David looks out the window. Across the street, Barbara's house is quiet, curtains drawn. "No," he says, "just confirming." He hangs up, sits still for a long time. They didn't know. For 14 years, not a single person checked the paper under their own feet. He closes the tin box, carefully, fold by fold, sets it back in the cabinet, exactly where it was. Not yet. Day 3. Barbara calls the police. At 9 a.m., 3 patrol cars pull up in front of David's house, blue and red lights spinning hard in the morning sun. 6 officers step out. One rests his hand on his holster, not drawing, but positioned. David is on the porch in a rocking chair, reading the newspaper. The lead officer, badge reading Morales, walks up the front steps, hand on his belt. "Mr. David Tran?" "Yes." "We received a report of a man with a weapon, threatening behavior." David folds the paper, sets it on the side table. "Who filed the report?" "I'm not at liberty to say. Barbara Kinsley." Morales doesn't confirm, doesn't deny. "Do you have any weapons on the property?" "No." "Have you threatened anyone?" "No." Morales looks around, at the peach tree, at the oak gate, back at David, a 62-year-old man in a plaid shirt, empty hands, sitting in a rocking chair. "Do you mind if we take a look inside?" David stands. "Not at all, please come in." 2 officers enter, check the living room, the bedroom, the kitchen, back out in 5 minutes. "Clear," one says. Morales nods, looks back at David. "Sorry for the inconvenience, sir." "No problem." But Morales doesn't leave yet. He glances across the street, at Barbara's house, where she's standing behind the window, phone still in her hand. "Mr. Tran," his voice drops, "if anyone is harassing you, call us, through the right channels." David nods. "Thank you, officer." The patrol cars pull away. At least 5 neighbors are standing on their porches, staring toward Barbara's house. She closes her curtains. But the damage is done, and this time, David isn't the one who took it. That evening, David's doorbell rings. He opens the door. A tall man in his mid-40s, gray suit, worn brown leather briefcase. "Mr. Tran? I'm Marcus Webb, attorney." David doesn't step aside. "I didn't hire a lawyer." "I know, but Barbara Kinsley just filed a civil lawsuit against you. intentional property damage to HOA assets and obstruction of management operations. David goes still. I haven't damaged anything. That's the problem. Marcus opens the briefcase, pulls out a thick packet. She's claiming your peach tree has caused damage to the shared drainage system, and that your refusal to remove it constitutes willful misconduct. David takes the packet, flips through it. 47 pages, citations, clauses, surveillance photos. She prepared carefully, Marcus says. Preliminary hearing in 10 days. If you lose, you're looking at $90,000. Repair costs, HOA fees, and her legal fees. David closes the packet. And if I win? Very unlikely. The HOA has signed agreements. You would have signed when you bought the property. I didn't sign. Marcus stops. You didn't sign? I didn't buy this property. Marcus frowns. So you inherited it? No. Then, David holds the door open wider. Do you have 20 minutes? Marcus hesitates, then nods. Yes. And that's when David opened the tin box he'd kept sealed for 20 years. Inside the tin box, a roll of pale yellow paper, wrapped tight with red twine. Marcus unrolls it carefully, reads the first line, stops, reads it again. This is a ground lease, 99 years. Correct. Executed in 1963. Yes. Marcus turns to page 2, page 3. His fingers slow down, the kind of slow that means reading a second time to make sure you understood the first. You leased the land to the HOA? No. David sets his tea down. I leased it to Greenfield LLC in 1963. They built 47 houses on my land, sold them all, then went bankrupt in 2009. Marcus looks up. The HOA was formed in 1992 by the homebuyers from Greenfield. They never bought the land, David says, only the houses. Marcus reads on. Page 5, page 6. Termination clause. If the company goes bankrupt, ground lease rights expire after 12 months' notice. He looks up. Did you send notice? March 2010. Marcus sets the page down, exhales slowly, the way someone does when they've solved a math problem they weren't hoping to get right. Which means the HOA has been on your land, illegally, for 14 years. 47 houses, internal roads, the park, the storage unit, all of it, David says, voice flat. Marcus leans back. Why didn't you say something sooner? David looks out the window. The orchard sits dark and still, just the white edge of peach blossoms visible in the night. My wife died in 2019. I just wanted to live quietly, grow things, water them. They didn't bother me. I didn't bother them. He turns back to Marcus. Until Barbara wanted to cut down Mary's tree. The hearing is on a Wednesday. Barbara arrives 20 minutes early. Navy blazer, perfect hair, 3 file boxes. The HOA's attorney, Jonathan, a silver-haired man with an air of expensive experience, brings 2 more. David arrives exactly on time, alone, an old leather briefcase. Jonathan opens with a 40-minute PowerPoint presentation, 183 slides, violation list, the peach tree photographed from 17 angles, real estate value comparison charts, 22 HOA bylaw citations. Judge Rivera, a woman in her 50s, gold-rimmed glasses, pen moving constantly, takes notes without stopping. Barbara sits perfectly straight. This is the battle she's prepared 2 weeks for. When Jonathan sits, Judge Rivera looks over at David. Mr. Tran, would you like to present? David stands, opens the briefcase, pulls out the rolled yellow paper, the one he hadn't unrolled in 20 years, until last week, sets it on the table. Your Honor, this is a 99-year ground lease, executed in 1963 between my family and Greenfield LLC. That company built 47 homes on my land, sold every one, then filed for bankruptcy in 2009. I sent a termination notice in March 2010, confirmed received by the county records office. As of March 2011, the HOA no longer has any legal claim to operate on this land. Complete silence in the courtroom. Judge Rivera looks at Jonathan. Counsel, were you aware of this document? Jonathan opens his mouth, closes it, looks at Barbara. Barbara stares at David like he's speaking a language she doesn't recognize. He's lying, voice ragged. I checked the records. The HOA owns the land. David doesn't look at her, only at the judge. He places 3 more pages on the table. Original, notarized, County Recorder's confirmation, dated March 12, 2010. Judge Rivera reads. Long, very long. Barbara starts to rise, mouth opening. Jonathan puts a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. The judge looks up. Court is in recess, both parties, my chambers, now. 15 minutes later, Jonathan walks out with a face like drained chalk. Barbara follows, hands shaking around her phone. David comes out last, closing the door quietly. Marcus is waiting in the hallway. What happened? David opens the briefcase, hands over a page. Marcus reads it, holds still for a long moment. Settlement agreement, HOA agrees to pay you. He looks up, voice lowered. $2.5 million. And drop all charges, David says, and acknowledge my land ownership, and remove Barbara Higgins from the president position, effective immediately. They have 30 days to pay, or I have the right to reclaim all the land. Marcus laughs. For the first time since meeting this man, you just turned the HOA into your tenant. Not exactly. David folds the page back into the briefcase. I'm going to sign a new lease for the residential association that replaces them. $1 a year, 99 years. One condition. No one touches any resident's plants without a genuine safety reason. He pauses at the door, doesn't turn around. Mary wanted everyone to have a garden. Now they will. 3 weeks later, David stands next to the peach tree, hose in hand, water running quiet down to the roots. He hears the gate open, turns. Mrs. Chen walks in, holding a small potted plant. Mr. Tran, I bought a lemon tree. Is it okay to plant it here? David opens his mouth, then smiles. Plant it anywhere you like. That afternoon, 3 other neighbors bring trees. 1 apple, 2 plums, 1 fig. Next week, 7 more. Mary's orchard isn't alone anymore. And Barbara? She moves out by the end of the month. No goodbye. The moving truck comes at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, gone before 9. Neighbors watch from their windows. No one waves. David never talks about it after that. No bragging, no interviews. When neighbors ask, he just smiles and says, the HOA had a misunderstanding. It's sorted now. But one thing changes. Every morning, after watering the peach tree, he walks a slow loop around the block, nods at the neighbors tending their new gardens, doesn't say much, just nods. And sometimes, when the light comes through the canopy just right, he stops, looks up, and says something too quiet for anyone to hear. You see that, Mary? They're growing things. I've thought about this story a lot, about a man who sat still for 14 years, not because he didn't know his rights, but because he knew them too well, and he chose to use them at exactly the right moment, for exactly the right reason. Barbara knocked on the wrong door, not because David was stronger, because he was more patient. If this story made you want to see more, subscribe. Next week, we're talking about the man who got fined by his HOA for painting his house the exact color they required. Sounds impossible? Wait until you hear why. And right now, drop a comment. If you were David, would you have waited 14 years? Or would you have opened that tin box the very first year?